So before we move into the serious movie that we're talking about,
yes,
I want to just discuss our audience for a moment.
What aspect of the audience are we discussing?
So I think it was 2 episodes, maybe 3 episodes. I don't count well. But a few episodes ago, we did the Muppets.
Right.
And I had discussed my love for John Krasinski.
Even though he's in it for 3/4 of a second.
Okay, that's not relevant. The point is that I discussed it. I love him a lot. A lot. And when we were talking about that, you decided to point out that even though I love him so much, I have never seen The Office.
Right. I think I may have also pointed it out for our A Quiet Place episode, but...
It may have happened because it is a glaring hole of my love for John Krasinski, clearly. So anyways, I had mentioned on the podcast that the reason I hadn't seen it was because I have not had cable since, like, high school.
Right.
And...
Yep.
Yes, and Twitter basically attacked me saying that The Office was not on cable and that you can get it at home and blah, 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 blah. It's like free TV, something I don't
You just
even
need
know.
an antenna.
Well, that came later, but anyways, we currently do not have cable. We do not have access to even basic network. We don't have anything. If it's not Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, we don't have it. So maybe there's a way that we could jerry-rig it, but we don't have it. But one of y'all came through, WDIM podcast, reached out to me and let me know that you can watch The Office on Netflix until January 2020. So y'all can relax. I have decided
She is getting her education on The Office.
Yes, I am binging. I'm feeling all the emotions. I'm feeling anger at everything that is not Jim and Pam. So y'all can be relaxed. And
next step is the British version.
I do want to see that, but my love for John Krasinski is now coming to be complete. So thank you guys for yelling at me, and also y'all can just go somewhere else.
And then I want to talk about Podcoin real quick.
Okay.
To
get it done.
Well, I love Podcoin. I want to mention it all of the time because it's a great way for us to see who is listening. It's a great way to see if someone's listening to more than one episode.
And it's a great way for you guys to get paid for listening to us or whoever you decide to listen to, but please let it be us.
Primarily us. You can listen to other people afterwards. That's
right.
fine.
I mean, I would love if I could just personally pay everybody to listen to us because I'm not above that, but I just don't have the funds to do so. So Podcoin allows you to do that, and I'm pretty cool with that.
If you're doing it anyway, you might as well get paid.
Right. So if you go in there and you listen, we've told you before that if we notice that you're listening to all of our episodes on there, we will shout you out because we can see who's kind of like binging all our episodes, which is so cool.
It's a great kind of like nice touch with the fans and as a confidence booster just to see someone who's actually enjoying listening to what we say.
Right. So anyways, if you're not already on there, definitely go check it out. I usually tweet out our code. I believe it's cinematically. So go use it. You get free, I think, like Podcoins for using the code or something. So you're building up to gift cards and things like that. So go ahead and do that so that we can then know all about our fans because it's so cool.
I'm Tyler.
I'm Shay.
This is Cinematically Correct. This week is my choice. Real movie or current movie choice, Brian Banks. We had a bit of a hard time finding this movie.
Yeah, it was not in a lot of theaters, and then even the theaters it was very limited showtimes. Right.
Although we did wind up getting the AMC dine-in theater.
Oh, great epic. I will do that every time if I can. Like the little table that they give you, the waiter, the wonderful reclining chairs. I'm down. I'm in.
It wasn't that much more expensive than a regular ticket. It was basically the same price.
Right. I mean, we didn't get to try much of the food, but it looked like there was solid food. I mean, you know.
So I want to go to the trailers because we do that every time we do a current movie. Quick.
Okay.
First was Star Wars, and it's the last Star Wars, and the originals are obviously the best ones, but it's still Star Wars, so we're gonna have to go.
Joy.
Then 21 Bridges, cop drama action movie.
Looked super good.
So hype.
Yeah, I'm totally in for that.
Then Queen and Slim, which is Black, Bonnie, and Clyde.
I thought that was a terrible thing that they said because, I mean,
well,
Bonnie and Clyde are bad criminals, and these people
are innocent victims of circumstance.
Right. It was just, I mean, it looks like it's a really good movie. I just didn't like that they called them that.
Also looks intense.
Yeah, definitely.
Next was Ford v Ferrari.
In. Christian Bale, Matt Damon, Shane from The Walking Dead. Yes, in. Sold.
Then next was Gemini Man, which was Will Smith.
Will Smith, yeah. Like the deep fake situation.
Well, it was like a sci-fi spy action movie somehow.
Yeah, none of that interests me. I want to know how they had young Will Smith play in the same movie with current day Will Smith.
It's CGI. It has to be like touch-ups.
Deepfake.
Yeah.
Deepfake.
Right.
Has to be.
Yeah.
But I want to see it.
Totally
I'm
down. The next was Overcomer. Little girl with asthma.
No, hard pass.
Runs cross country.
Yeah, I'm not trying to cry.
It was an emotional roller coaster of a trailer. Gonna be honest. It's another intense looking movie.
Yeah, no, we do enough of those. No, hard pass.
Blinded by the Light was the next one with Rob Brydon. We're also binging Would I Lie to You?
Yes. So if you guys don't know what that is, it's basically a British panel show, game show thing. David Mitchell, Rob Brydon, and I just forgot my favorite person. Oh, he's my favorite, and I forgot. I'm so sorry, Lee Mack. Not that he would ever listen to this, but, you know. Anyway, so yeah, Rob Brydon is in this. And I've never seen him in anything other than Would I Lie to You, so I'm just down just to see that.
Right. Totally down. Last was Harriet. Real life story of Harriet Tubman. Totally game.
I mean, we all know that Tyler is going to put that on the list at some point. I do love
history movies.
It's probably already on the list.
It is, actually.
Yeah, so, yeah. Okay. All right, so the movie that we chose was Brian Banks.
Yes.
You chose it, why?
I chose it because I thought it was going to be an inspirational football type movie, and it was not that at all. It was.
So you are super into football. You played football in high school, and you are like obsessed now. Yes. Everyone knows your love for Tom Brady. It's kind of borderline.
I played all the way through college from Pop Warner, so I played for 10 and a half years, almost 20 years, give or take, and love it. That was not this movie. No. Let's just get that out. If you're going to watch a football movie, this is not it.
Between the two of us, it was probably a more personal movie to me than it was to you.
Well, it was a very intense movie. It was a very deep movie with dealing with real social issues.
Right. And very current day topical social issues.
Right. So, we're going to go with brief synopsis and then we'll get into the characters?
Sure.
Brief synopsis.
Brief synopsis.
Brian Banks, high school star, falsely accused of sexual assault and rape, is coerced into taking a plea deal from his lawyer, spends 5 years or 6 years in prison, and then gets out and has to be a registered sex offender with that ankle monitor. He reaches out to the Project Innocence in California. The Innocence Project. And gets the sentence commuted, or he gets exonerated. He pursues his dream and winds up in the NFL. That's the movie.
Yeah, that was a really, okay. Yeah, sure. Okay, so Brian Banks is played by Aldous Hodge. I don't know him from A Hole in the Wall.
I mean, the only thing I think I've seen him in is probably Leverage on TV.
Yeah, so, I mean, he's in a few movies. He's in Hidden Figures, Die Hard with a Vengeance, Straight Outta Compton, and then Leverage, and there's more movies, but those are the most current ones on IMDb. But he plays Brian Banks. He is amazing. Honestly, the most likable character that I've seen in a movie in a long time. Like, We've
seen a lot of movies recently where we don't connect to the main characters.
Right.
And he killed it because I connected straight from the start all the way to the end. And you're just like, you got this, man. Come on.
Right. You're pulling from him from second one of the movie. And yeah. That takes a really good actor to do that and really get you to be invested enough to care. And he really...
I think it was also part of the script writing where he never tries to blame anyone for his circumstance. He just wants to get back on track, which is very, very nice and very refreshing because a lot of people try to play the, well, it's not my fault blame game.
Right. And I know that they did, the actors in this did have a lot of interaction with the real life people.
Yes.
So I think that probably helped a lot. But okay, so then Justin Brooks, which is the professor of the California Innocence Project, the lawyer that Brian Banks reaches out to for help, was played by Greg Kinnear. Now, y'all on Twitter let me know that he's amazing, and everyone was excited to see his name, and I'll be honest, I'd never seen him before. He was wonderful, don't get me wrong, but I'd never seen him.
We're going to have to find a Greg Kinnear movie because I don't know of a single movie where he plays an unlikable character.
Yeah, so for anybody who, wants a refresher of who he is, he's in Little Miss Sunshine, he's in As Good as It Gets, he's in You've Got Mail, which I have seen, but I don't know what he plays in that. It says Frank Navasky, but I don't know who that is. And then he's also in Sabrina. So I have seen You've Got Mail, I think I've even seen Sabrina, but I have not seen Little Miss Sunshine.
I think he's also in Invincible, which is another football movie.
In fact, I've not seen that, so... There is Melanie Liburd, who plays Karina in this movie. She plays Brian Banks' love interest, not the person who falsely accuses him, but the person he meets while he's on parole.
Right.
She also is a rape survivor and plays a very strong, independent woman. I mean, she was a very likable character, but they didn't give you a lot of time
She was
to
not
connect
in
with her.
the movie a whole lot. She was a very minor piece, but it fit into the overall story very well, where they connected. They had that awkward conversation where he has to tell her about being a convicted sex offender, and then her giving her heartbreaking story about being assaulted, and then just I think it added to the movie and it humanized him.
Right.
And it didn't have the problems that a lot of movies have where they just throw in a love interest to do it.
Right. If you guys don't know who she is, I recognize her from the show This Is Us. She plays, I can't remember the brother's name, but the blonde brother who's an actor, she plays his love interest. She's also in Gypsy, The Grinder. Apparently she's in Game of Thrones. But yeah, that's what her IMDb says. I've only ever seen her in This Is Us. Sherry Shepherd was the mother.
Yes.
I, again, have not seen her.
I haven't seen her in a whole lot of things. I watched an interview about how she prepared for the role and got the role, and apparently it was very difficult for her because she comes from a comedy background, and this is not a comedy.
You would never know she came from a comedy background.
No, this is a dramatic performance that she delivered.
She nailed it. I know there's a note in here that I wrote at one point that says he's got the best mom I've ever seen.
I think I wrote down, that's a mom, or that's what a real mom looks like.
Right. I mean, so she did a really good job, and there was never a point where you were like, okay, well, maybe this happened because of parenting or anything like that. Like, you never had that question. It was team mom the whole time.
Yes.
So the rest of the characters are pretty ancillary. Like, they're in and out, and you don't really see them. But I did want to mention, because it's not on IMDb, that Morgan Freeman is in this movie.
Yes, he is. For a hot minute. He's in there for 2 or 3 scenes,
but he is an important character. So Morgan Freeman plays a, I guess you can say, like, kind of like a teacher that he meets in jail.
Well, I think he's somebody employed by the prison to try to teach rehabilitation.
Right. So he really kind of helps Brian Banks change his perspective and kind of realize that you can't dwell in the past, but you need to focus on, like, the future and kind of not allowing yourself to stay trapped in your mind and in jail and all of that, and more think towards...
You can't be bogged down by circumstance. You can only work to make things better now.
Right. He is based on a real person that I believe Brian Banks is still friends with today, from what I read. But you guys would not know that Morgan Freeman is in this if you heard anything about this movie, because it is not listed on IMDb on either the Brian Banks page or Morgan Freeman's page. The only place I do see it, I think, listed was on Wikipedia, but it says that he was uncredited. He's such a big name that you're not going to see the movie and not realize he's in it. Like, it's impossible. Like, you're going to know. So, there is rumors and speculation out there that his name was removed because of the sexual assault allegations that are made against him. Yeah. I don't know that any of those have been proven true or false or anything. I literally I haven't heard anything since they first popped up. It would make sense that if those are even out there, that they wouldn't want his name
given
attached.
The context of this movie, they don't want him. And he and his publicist don't want to have anything to do with this movie if they're still fighting and going over that. Like, it's a bad look for everyone involved.
Right. So, I mean, I'm not going to make comments on whether or not anything about Morgan Freeman. I literally know nothing. So, but I do want to mention that he's in it because he's in fact in it.
I mean, Morgan Freeman is a very talented actor, and in this movie, not speaking on him personally, but in this movie, he reminded me a lot of Red from Shawshank Redemption, which is another prison character that he's played previously.
Right, and I do think that's intentional.
I would imagine that's probably intentional, but they're just the guiding influence and the falsely imprisoned person talking to Morgan Freeman to get some balance and perspective. Both movies. One was fiction, this is true. Just it was a nice kind of connect to a different movie.
Right. Okay, so, I mean, we can talk about the plot for a little bit. I will say, I've seen all the comments out there. I've seen all the reviews. I've seen you guys on Twitter. Anyone who's seen this movie does have an issue with the cinematic credentials of it. People are complaining about the score. People are complaining about how well it builds drama. People are complaining about how formulaic it feels. All of these things. And now I'm going to tell you right now that while maybe some of those things faltered, I didn't even notice it until anybody, and I don't even know that I feel that it's true, but the topics in this movie are so important, and I feel that they were delivered in a very really well. They were delivered really well. Right. And I feel that overpowered any of the technical things that they should have done.
It's one of those things where this movie didn't call for a whole lot of dramatic music. You could have a nice score in the background, but that's not what you are watching this movie for. It's not how the script plays out and how formulaic it feels. It's about the story. It's about how well the actors, to me, deliver the story and the truth of what happens.
Right. So with that being said, I don't want to necessarily go through plot by plot, breaking it down and breaking down like all the little nuances like that. I would rather more kind of focus on the story, what's true and how it was portrayed, because I think that's more important in this scenario.
Right. Now, this movie does a whole lot of jumping around.
Yes, it does.
Which I have no problem with. You generally don't like that at all.
Generally, that really bothers me, but I found that this movie did a good job of making it very clear what time period you were in. I never found myself disoriented. I was never questioning like what's going on. So I think for this movie, it worked really well.
I also think it lends to the story because he's living the memories as he's trying to prove his innocence.
Right.
So it starts off with him in high school, and you don't see what happened, but then he goes to prison. He's told by his attorney that he has to take the plea or he's going to go to prison for 40 years, which apparently is a very true to his circumstance where he was in a room and he had 10 minutes to decide his life.
Right, and his lawyer basically told him that if you go out there right now, you're going to get an all-white jury and they're going to convict you because you're a black teenager. And he said that those weren't his thoughts at all. He was just a 17-year-old kid listening to a lawyer that he thought had his best interest in mind.
He's a 17-year-old kid that didn't do the thing that he's going to prison or going to trial for.
Right.
Like in his mind, he goes, I'm innocent, I should be fine.
Right, and I don't think he quite understood the gravity of it, and I think that laws did develop over time that made it even more difficult for him. We learned pretty early on in the movie that while he's on parole, he was playing football for a junior college. And then a law was introduced that his parole officer called him in and let everybody who was on parole that was a sex offender know that because they're on the sex offender list, they now have to have ankle bracelets.
Right.
And these ankle bracelets, I believe, are meant to determine if you've stayed within county, which is part of your parole, and also that you've stayed away from children or within a certain amount of feet.
Well, you can't go to parks, you can't go to amusement parks or playgrounds or schools or anything like that.
Right. And because he had to wear this ankle bracelet, this meant he would have to quit football because they said that football would cause him to damage the ankle bracelet.
Right.
So, now remember, too, he's not a child sex offender. There's no anything involving children involved in this. So, there is a lot of times in this movie where he's on a date and he's, like, the next building over from a park and he has to leave because he's too close. Like, things like that. And that was not part of his crime. So
I mean, he was a high school student that allegedly had sex with another high school student.
Right.
Like
I just want to clarify that he didn't do anything to children. There were, even if the crime was true, that did not happen. So I just want to clarify that he is dealing with that, even though. And
there's a lot of scenes in the movie where he has to deal with not only that, but also the unfair persecution of trying to find a job while being a convicted felon. Like,
right.
I can't imagine having to go in there and fill out the application. And you get through the interview and you killed it, and then they look at that and go, "Oh, never mind."
Right, and it seemed like a lot of the times when he went into these interviews, they were really impressed by him, and I mean, it would be hard not to be. He very well spoken, very smart, very
driven, goal-oriented guy.
Right.
He's very focused. He's very precise. He's very well spoken. And you can't help but get along with this guy.
Right, but because he had a felony, he has to report that. Obviously, I've never had any kind of run-in with the law, so I don't know if you have to announce what it is, but I believe that you do. If I remember correctly, in applications, it says, have you ever been convicted of a felony? If so, what is it?
Right.
So I think that's even harder, especially because a lot of the women, or a lot of the bosses that they showed were women. Now, I will get into a little bit more later about why I think for a woman particularly, seeing that type of felony may be a little bit harder to get past than some other things, like, I don't know, tax evasion or things like that. So I will get into that. They showed that really well. And how much of a struggle that is, even for people who really did commit these crimes. Because remember, even if he did, which he didn't, he was 17.
Also, there is such a thing as time served. Like, you're supposed to get out of prison, and then you're supposed to be able to try to move on with your life.
Right.
And you just can't help but feel for anyone in that circumstance.
Right. So the movie goes on to have him basically reaching out to the Innocence Project. They turn him down at first, and then even when they take him on, They really don't think there's anything they can do for him because basically the original case that happened, they had evidence that they didn't use, and you cannot use the same evidence again. It
has to be new.
Right. It has to be brand new, like life-altering, earth-shattering evidence. And the lawyer, Justin Brooks, was basically like, that's not going to happen. You're not going to find anything earth-shattering in this case.
You need to get a writ of habeas corpus through to a judge that approves it, saying, this new piece of information shows that you might have been wrongly sent to prison. It's because he took the no contest, which is essentially a guilty plea, which wasn't explained accurately to his attorney, his attorney. So he talks about how the hallway, there's no way. He talks about there was no DNA evidence. The rape kit came back negative. All of that was available at the time, so they can't use that as evidence to overturn. It seems almost like the deck is stacked and the system is broken. And a lot of times in this movie, they talk about the system being broken. Right. Because it is. There's no denying that our system could be improved. There are a lot of meaningful changes that need to happen, and it is outright embarrassing that this is not the way the world works, where an innocent man spends time in prison. So he finally gets contacted by the girl that accused him on Facebook, and she messages him out of the blue, and I don't know how he kept it together, because I'd have lost my damn mind. She just doesn't even understand that she ruined his life, and how you can be that tone deaf, I would not understand.
Right, and just to clarify, this in fact did happen in real life.
Yes.
It seems from what I read, this movie is pretty close to the real life story. I'm sure that they took a little bit of liberties, but remember that Brian Banks was very much involved in the movie, and almost everything is how it happened. So go ahead, you can...
Well, so the girl that accused him, Kenesha Rice, messages on Facebook. He asks her to call him, and he keeps his calm somehow. And he asks her to meet him at an office of a private investigator that he hired. He didn't tell her this, but he hired a private investigator. And they tape her having an interview with the private investigator where she admits that she did not get assaulted and nothing happened like she said it did. And they have video evidence, and because in California you need both parties to consent to be recorded, they can't use that either, which is both astounding and horrifying. Like, just how? She said it. There's very clear tape of her not being coerced, saying that it never happened. And that's not the case in most states, where it's just one-party consent, a lot of places.
Right. And I mean, we're not going to get into whether or not that stuff should be admissible. That's a whole nother conversation to have. But she was recorded, and they were finally able to get the DA to listen to them and consider his habeas corpus. And they brought her in, they subpoenaed her. Oh, I skipped over a little bit of a part. So
where they did accidental YouTube.
Yeah, so they accidentally, and I'm using air quotes, leaked this video to a reporter. In the movie, it was a reporter that had previously interviewed him, Brian Banks,
as a high school star going to college at USC.
Right. And now I don't know how true that part is, but they definitely leaked it, and they definitely got public outcry of, like, what's going on? Why is this person dealing with this when she clearly said he didn't do it? So because of that, the DA decided to subpoena her and kind of try to find out her information. She claimed that she was coerced, that she was paid.
Because a convicted felon was able to come up with $10,000 somehow.
Right. And she came with her mother, and it was very clear that the mother pushed her to do this in the first place, and they did it for money.
They did get a settlement of $1.5 million from the school district. It was the Unified School District of wherever they attended, which
Long Beach,
California. And she got the $1.5 million. Her mother was pushing her the whole way, and I believe they only got $750,000, thankfully.
Yeah, so they were supposed to get 2 installments, but the second installment happened after they found out she was lying, so they never gave it to her. The school district did sue her after all was said and done for $2 million to recuperate not only the money that they were paying out to her, but also punitive damages. Unfortunately, she went into hiding. I don't think she's come out since. So
they're not going to get that money back. The $750 was spent just because.
Right. Now, her name is not really Kenesha Rice. I'm not going to say her real name on the podcast just because the movie didn't for legal reasons. So I feel like we probably shouldn't. But it's very easy to find out. You can Google it. It's on Wikipedia. It's on almost every website. But just as a clarification, her name is the only one that I saw that was changed for legal reasons. Justin Brooks is, in fact, Justin Brooks.
Well, I think they did that because she is, in this movie, she is set up as the villain because she is the one that did the false accusing, which is not a good thing to do to someone, obviously. And I didn't feel any connection or any sympathy for her at all after it was found out that he was innocent,
No,
and she
not
just
me neither.
framed him. I felt no sympathy for the mother either. I mean, I think that the mother...
Her mother, not his.
Her mother, who pushed the whole circumstance, is the real problem here, because there was no evidence, the stories didn't match up, or her story changed, his never did, and there was nothing there, and it still went through.
I agree. Okay, so I mean, that's all of the real life story that happened.
Yes.
But I did want to touch on really quickly the kind of the romantic storyline that they put in there. I don't know if it's true or not true, but basically he had met this girl at a gym, and when they started seeing each other and realizing they liked each other, he decided to let her know about the false accusation. They don't actually show you really him telling her very much, but they show her response, and she at first leaves. She couldn't deal, and she leaves. And honestly, my first thought to that, and I know I wrote down a note saying I can't blame her. There's too many women that have been sexually assaulted that it has to be awfully hard to hear that, and you don't know him that well to know what to believe.
You've met him once or twice, and he's telling you that, I mean, it's understandable that you have to just try to protect yourself.
Right.
Because any number more than one person is too many people. Like, one is too many people. Like, there should be no rape or sexual assault ever. Right. I know that's not realistic.
That's not the world we live in.
It's not, and it's horrifyingly common.
Right. So they end up having her admit to him that she is actually a victim of sexual assault, and that is why it was really hard for her. And I think that it was a really good part to add to this movie, especially given the time period that this is coming out. So I don't know how many reviews you saw on this movie, but the majority of reviews that I saw was criticizing the movie for coming out at the wrong time, saying that this movie coming out during the Me Too movement was tone deaf and shouldn't have happened. And it's really tough. And I want to say right off the bat that this is a very touchy subject, and I think everybody has very kind of close opinions to their heart about this, and I am no exception to that. But I think this was an important part to add because of the Me Too movement.
Well, I honestly think that's why there was such a delay from when it premiered at an LA film festival to when it was released widely. I think that circumstance did play into that. It was released, or it debuted 9/22 of 2018, so September 22nd. A full year later, they released it to multiple theaters worldwide.
I mean, that's very possible. Obviously, I'm sure everybody knows what the Me Too movement is, but whoever doesn't. It started back in 2006 with an activist. I believe her name was Tamara Burke, I believe her name was. I wish I could get it easily.
Well, it's all about how common, and trying to draw attention to the fact that sexual assault and rape and all of those horrible things are shockingly commonplace. And I think that for a lot of time has been glossed over and not talked about. And so they tried to bring everything out to light so that there's real meaningful change that happens.
Okay, yeah, but no. So
No?
So the original reason that the hashtag was created was to empower women of color for feeling comfortable coming forward with their ideas, and it got started because the activist, I believe her name was Tamara Burke, was speaking to a child, and she said that she just wanted to be able to say "Me Too" to the young girl and wish she had. The hashtag gained popularity in 2017 when Alyssa Milano used the hashtag to describe a sexual assault occurrence that she had at a concert. It was right around the time that the Harvey Weinstein thing started picking up. Oh. Now, I don't know if Alyssa Milano and Harvey Weinstein had any interactions. I couldn't find that anywhere, but it was right around that time. And then she encouraged a lot of people to come forward, and there was a lot of celebrities that came forward. A lot of women. Full stop. I mean,
a lot of celebrities, a lot of women, and a lot of people were outed as being creepy, degenerate, horrible people.
Right, and I mean, we're still seeing it from politicians to movie stars to CEOs to everybody. There's a big backlash, and we're learning that this has happened to way more women than people really wanted to acknowledge.
Right.
And I mean, it's way deeper than it's even public. I mean, there's a lot more people, I'm sure, that have not come forward. So it's astounding, and it's awful. But I think that it's important that we realize that with movements that are this large and this widespread, that there are going to be those people who take advantage of said movement. And it's awful, and it's horrible that somebody would do that, and it's horrible that somebody would say something that isn't true. But I
think that bothers me because it takes away the validity of the people that were survivors of an assault. You take away their credibility by claiming that something that never happened, and you essentially lie and you devalue their story.
Right. I mean, I think for so long, women had to deal with the fact that people didn't believe them, and even if they did believe them, they didn't care. It was a lot of, men kind of had the attitude of, well, I mean, that's show business, or that's how you get...
Boys will be boys.
Right. That's how you get promoted. That's how you whatever. There was always those things. And it was acceptable for a long time, or at least not ridiculed, and it's horrible. But now that women are finally feeling like they can say something and people care and people will support them, it is awful that there are going to be those people who use that support and use that momentum to put themselves in a position that they want to be in, whether it be to get money, whether it be to take somebody down, whether it be to get some kind of clout, whatever it is.
Just to get attention, really. I mean, sometimes that happens. I'm not saying that happens with any degree of frequency, but it's unavoidable that that will happen. And It's unfortunate that innocent people's lives are ruined, which I think this movie does a very good job of showcasing. It's not saying that all people that are accused are innocent, but sometimes someone falls through the cracks, and there has to be a better system in place to make sure that everyone gets their day in court, and then only guilty people go to prison. And I'm fine with all guilty people going to prison. I just want innocent people to avoid it.
Right. So, I mean, there is statistics out there. I don't know the exact numbers, but the amount of people who are falsely accused is far less than the amount of people who have had this happen to them who have not seen justice served, which is horrifying and terrible. And I feel like it should be that all people that have gone through this should be able to have justice served. But our system is broken. Yes. There's a lot of reasons why the system is broken. Now, as a woman, and I'm sure many of you have dealt with this in some way, and I've dealt with it on both sides of this matter. I did not falsely accuse somebody, but somebody very close to me had this happen, and also being a survivor of this, I think it's important to remember that it is very hard for a woman to come forward. It is very hard to go through the rape kit. It is very invasive, demoralizing. It's hard to have somebody listen to you. It's hard to have somebody believe you. And when there's people like that out there that falsely accuse, you don't even necessarily believe yourself. You question. It wasn't my fault. Did I cause the problem? Did I not speak up? All of those things. And I think it's very hard. And I think it's something that we all need to remember. And then on the falsely accused side, I think it is so hard for especially a woman to look at a guy and believe that could happen. But there is a lot of versions of falsely accusing. In this case, which is very similar to what I've experienced, it's a situation where they actually had sexual contact. They made out, I believe, maybe touching, but nothing more than that.
Right.
But the girl, I am betting from the way it was shown, was
embarrassed,
humiliated because he didn't want to sleep with her. And it wasn't because of her. It was because he heard something and he realized that
he didn't want to jeopardize his career in football.
Right.
Ironically.
But I am betting that a lot of times in falsely accused situations, something like that is the culprit. Right. The person is demoralized. They feel rejected. They feel all of those things. And that's a lot of what happened in my personal situation. But we need to remember that those people are people too, and that they have feelings too. And so I don't want to turn into I don't want this to turn into, well, just condemn everybody who falsely accuses and they should all be locked up and thrown away the key. There is two sides to everything, and there are all people. And I think that's important to remember when we go into this, because it's a really hard situation for everyone involved, and it's a really hard thing to deal with.
I just want better systems in place for the people that have been falsely accused to have their day in court and to show and experience that they don't have to worry about going to prison for something they haven't done.
Right. It's innocent until proven guilty regardless of the crime.
Right.
And I wish that there was better things in place for both parties. For the woman to be able to come forward and not feel completely humiliated and demoralized, and for the guy to be able to prove if he is innocent that he is in fact innocent, or the woman if the woman is the one being accused. Either way, there has to be a better way. There has to be a better system. I just hope that maybe this movie will give a little bit more light to that side of it, because I don't think we really talk about that very much. I don't think falsely accused is discussed enough. I mean, and it's not even just in sexual crimes. I mean, we watched the there's like some Netflix series of the people in death row, and how, I mean, they're not necessarily falsely accused, but some of them have
mitigating circumstances, and they were put on death row when you could make a case that they should have a set number of years in prison, but not certainly not the death penalty for what they
there's
did
a lot
or
of
how they were
situations
involved.
Yeah, there's a lot of things in there where it's like the person who did it with them only got 5 years, or like they got like a plea deal.
Or the person that actually killed the person, they just happened to be there, got 5 years, and they took the plea.
Right.
And they were an accomplice, but never actually killed anyone, and they get the death penalty because they were the second person to talk.
Right. So I just mean all around, there needs to be a better way. There has to be a better system. I mean, we've seen so many people who, I mean, there's falsely accused people for other crimes that are actually put to death. It's horrifying that these things happen. It shouldn't happen. So just want to say that because I think it's important that this movie brings those issues up, and I think hopefully it will bring attention to a broken prison system that I don't think gets enough attention at all.
I mean, my sister went to law school, and I think that her goal was to help in this fashion, to try to fix the broken system.
Now, I wonder if there's an Innocence Project in Massachusetts.
There is.
So I hope that she's connected with that, and I hope that if there is an Innocence Project in Massachusetts, I mean, I would be totally down for volunteering.
Well, there are programs in the state of Massachusetts and nationally where you can either donate time or money to try to pitch in to fix the broken system.
Well, that's something I'm going to look into. But anyways, I mean, for me, that's everything I want to talk about. There are particular cases on the Innocence Project that I just find I can't.
Crushing.
I can't. Yeah, there's a particular person, Marilyn Malero, I believe.
Where Justin Brooks is her longstanding client.
Yes, she was she was involved with the Kings, and I think it was 2 people were killed, and they pinned it on her because of an eyewitness who said they saw it. It was later proven that the person who said they saw it could not physically have seen from where they said they saw because there was too much foliage and it was too far of a distance and it was too high up and like all these things. And also the person who did it confessed, and the woman is still today on death row.
That is just insane.
Yes, it's horrifying. It's on the Innocence Project's website if you guys want to read about her story. I believe her name is Marilyn Malero, and it's mentioned in the movie, which is why I know about it.
Now, do we have any audience asks? Or did the internet let us down again?
No. So the only audience ask that came up from this was a particular podcaster, which I'm not going to name names because, trying to be nice here, basically asked if they should see the movie because they had no intention of seeing it, and I had recommended it because honestly I think this is an amazing movie and I think it's important, and the word important got me in trouble. Apparently you should not use that word to recommend movies. That apparently indicates that the movie is no good. I didn't know this, but you learn a new thing every day. Anyways, basically they ended up seeing it and they hated the movie. There was a lot of cinematic issues with it.
They're a bit of a movie snob.
Yes. Now I get it. Podcasting, you're gonna really like all of the cinematic aspects of a movie, but for me, this was bigger than that. It was a lot bigger than that, and I'm so glad that this type of issue got a voice and through a person that is really amazing. I'm just in awe by that, and that takes over. But so that is the only person that responded to our audience asks. So yeah, there's nothing there. Do you have a history minute though?
Tyler's History Minute.
I have a couple.
All right.
So, at points in this movie, he's explaining to Brian Banks, the lawyers, is explaining to Brian Banks what is needed to get out of prison, and it's a writ of habeas corpus. Mm-hmm. What that is essentially you send a petition to a judge to say, I don't belong in prison, or I'm in prison under bad pretext, sign away and get me out of prison, functionally. A couple times during American history, that has been suspended for certain people in subsections of the country. Most notably, Abe Lincoln suspended habeas corpus during the Civil War to not let Confederate sympathizers and people aiding the South out of prison so that they could then go back to shoot more Union soldiers.
Gotcha.
Then, again, in wartime, we have a terrible history of doing this. World War II, Japanese-American citizens were sent to internment camps for the majority of the war because they were worried that they would aid the Japanese in attacking the country. Even though they're American citizens, some of them were born here. It doesn't matter how you get here. If you're an American citizen, you should be treated as every other American citizen.
Agreed.
So those are my 2 history minutes. It's kind of an embarrassing blight on our political record, but
it's important to know.
So, ratings?
Reviews.
Sure, go ahead.
So Rotten Tomatoes, the tomato rating system for the movie professionals has it at 57, which is really below where I would have put it. I'm betting it's related to all of those technical things, whether it's the
score or the drama building or
the pace of the movie, the procedural nature of the movie. It has a 98% audience score, so there's a wide disparity there, and the average person seems to love this movie.
I guess I'm a Joe Schmo then.
I would fall more into that category. So I'm going to give this an 8.75.
Okay.
So this movie just hooked me for the story. And it's just so compelling that he was able to overcome this and keep going when everyone and everything in the world is telling him to give up. And he then wound up playing in the NFL for the Atlanta Falcons. He had several tryouts, but the fact that he was able to persevere and overcome this was remarkable. And the acting was fantastic. The story is compelling, and I can't give it less than that.
All right. I was going to give it a 9. The acting was amazing. I was really glad that I was able to connect to actors that I didn't recognize before, because sometimes I have a hard time doing that if I don't know them at all. But I was enthralled the whole time, and it was important issues that I'm so glad to see on the big screen. The only reason I don't give it a 10 is because I just wish that they gave a little bit more of him in jail so that we could feel a little bit more of what he went through in that time period, because I'm really curious to see how he went from a 17-year-old kid who thought he was going to be free to then being in prison. Like, what he went through, I have to imagine it was horrible, and knowing that the prison system is broken, I would like to know more about that. But obviously it's a movie and you can only do so much, so I get that. So it's not going to take off too many points. Anyways,
we are well over time.
Oh yeah, we're well over time, and I knew that was going to happen. This movie was something I knew that was going to.
I mean, Brian got $142,000 from, I think, the state of California for being wrongfully in prison for 6 years. Why doesn't the Unified School District give him the other $750 that they were planning to pay out? It's already written off the books.
I know, right? They should.
They should definitely give him the $750, although he's not the type of person to get a handout.
No, I don't think so. He currently works as a almost like an ambassador for the Innocence Project. Right. He's going around motivational speaking and helping those who need that kind of help. So.
Right. He did play in the NFL. He was on the Atlanta Falcons. He tried out for a number of different teams, but he is no longer playing, unfortunately. I feel like that was one of the wasted opportunities where it's a big what if he was able to go to college and able to play in the NFL for a longer period of time. And I guess we'll never know.
Right. Absolutely. But anyways, we are far over time. So, I mean, I would love to talk about this more. What are you pointing at me for?
Fault.
Well, you know what? Some things have to be spoken about. But anyways, so we are well over time, but we are coming back next week. Unfortunately, it is not going to be a lighthearted movie, which was my intention because it is my choice and I don't want y'all attacking me. But
she's doing this to punish me.
Right. So if you guys remember a few weeks ago, Tyler almost lost everything of our podcast between the interview and the podcast because he's just himself. So blame Tyler. So somebody reached out to me on Twitter, a podcast called Telehell, and they offered to send me a made-for-TV movie called First Steps, and they described it as extremely campy. The reason they offered it was because we had said we didn't know who Judd Hirsch was. I said it on the Muppets episode, and this movie has Judd Hirsch in it. And the minute I heard the word campy, I thought of Tyler, and I thought he needed to see it. And then when he made this mistake, I said, this is the perfect punishment. Campy, made-for-TV movie, all the way.
It's going to be painful.
So
I know who Judd Hirsch is. He's the dad from Independence Day.
Well, right. But we have not done much with him in it, and I did not recognize him. So, anyways, we're going to be doing a campy movie. It looks like it's a little bit serious. It has something to do with a paralyzed little girl. I know nothing else about it.
Charming and uplifting.
Yes. So, we are going to probably focus on the campy side of it, because that's what Tyler hates. But after that, we will be doing much more upbeat movies or horror movies, depending which way we go. No more serious movies for a little while after this. Right. So anyways, thank you guys for listening. If you want to talk to us outside of the podcast, I am on Twitter at CinematicallyC. Tyler is on Twitter at BlameTylerCC. You can find us on Facebook at Cinematically Correct's Listener Group.
Never go there.
Yeah, we're never there. You can email us at cinematicallycorrect@gmail.com. So
Instagram.
Yeah, you can reach out to us on Instagram at CinematicallyC. We're not there as often, but Sure. If you have questions for a future episode, so this week would be for First Steps, tweet me. We do Audience Ask every week, and you can also just tweet me. I would love to actually have Audience Ask questions. I know this movie isn't going to get any, so if you guys have anything, send it to me. Anyways, thank you to Jake and Athens Music for our intro and outro music, and we will be back next week with First Steps.